And that gets us into the next thing that we learn from jail time Joseph, okay? And that's this. In these 2 years, what we learn from him is that your dependence determines your destiny. Your dependence determines your destiny. Look at what Joseph told Pharaoh when Pharaoh came to see Joseph. And it says that Joseph, listen, he took himself a shower, got him all shaved up, got a haircut, going to see Pharaoh. It's a big day in Joseph's life. He put in the time to prepare for the day because Joseph recognized an opportunity when he saw it, okay? And then when Joseph heard Pharaoh's dream, he saw the opportunity, and Pharaoh told him, hey, interpret my dream. This is what Joseph said. Verse 16, he said, it is beyond my power. I need somebody to tell me it's beyond my power. I'm hearing a lot of this side of the room. It's beyond my power. Come on, guys. There they are, okay? It's beyond my power to do this, Joseph replied. But God can tell you what it means and set you at ease. Let me ask you something. How does Joseph know that? How'd you figure that one out, Joe? How'd that work? Where'd you get that little bit of wisdom from? Where did you get that nugget of maturity that you just pulled out? Because up until now, let's be honest, your power, Mr. Joseph, has taken you pretty far. It has, right? Your own power caused you to rise in your family, caused you to rise in Potiphar's house, caused you to rise in the jail cell. Even when the jail cell, you become like, you're in jail, but you're becoming a favorite of the warden. It seems to me like your power to do stuff, your skills, your ability is pretty strong. But what's this you say that's beyond your power? What was it? Dreams and interpreting them. Interpretation is beyond his power. And now you're willing to be a witness to the power of God, to arguably the most powerful and dangerous and unstable human being on the face of the earth. Where did you learn that kind of dependence, Joseph? Where did you learn that kind of truth? Where did you learn that kind of boldness in your life? I'm going to tell you where he learned it. In jail. In jail. As he sat there for 2 years getting ready for his next season. How many of you today are going through a season? I don't care if it's about your calling, you're about your purpose, maybe a season in your relationships, the ones that are the closest to you, that you just feel like it is beyond my power to fix it. I can't do it on my own. How many of us feel overwhelmed? How much of our week is spent in anxious thought about stuff that never happens, but we're convinced that it's going to? How many of us are trying to fix it with everything we can in our own power? In our own power. We're trying to escape it on our own power, trying to justify it in our own power, trying to avoid it, in our own power. Joseph hasn't let the time go by idly that he's been in jail. He's putting himself to work. He's doing the self-examination. He's developing the nuances of his gift. He's learning how to depend on God in situations that feel like they have no end and they're completely out of control. And most importantly, he's learning that if there's going to ever be a next season for me, my success or failure isn't going to be dependent on my power. It's going to depend on God's. And I believe that so thoroughly, so intimately, and so fully that when I do get a chance to get into a new season, I'm going to be upfront about that reality from minute one of the conversation. That's what's going on here. Joseph is a witness to God's power in this situation, not because he's got it all figured out, not because his life is all together and everything is looking great. It's because he finally has learned that he doesn't. You don't. It's not because I've got it all together. It's because I'm depending on someone who does. It's not because I've got faith in my abilities. It's because I've got faith and I can witness to his. And I believe it and I'm willing to walk it. His good looks might have scored him points with Potiphar's wife. They are not getting him out of jail. Only God can do that. Only God can interpret dreams. Only God can interpret situations. What does that mean? It means that your dream today, it might not be playing out the way that you want it to in this season of your relationships, in your calling, or in your sense of purpose. But Joseph says that God is in charge of interpretation. That means you're not. That means I'm not. Do you know how much pressure that takes off of us? We don't have to interpret the situation. Well, what is our part in our situation then? Your part is that you're in charge of stepping out in obedience, one step at a time, in the day that God has given you to live today. That's it. That's your job. And as I step, I'm not going to interpret my circumstances the way the devil wants me to interpret my circumstances, okay? Because in my own power, I interpret my circumstances as my destiny. In my own power, I interpret my feelings as ultimate reality. In my own power, I interpret the prison I'm in as a tomb I'm never going to be able to walk out of. Adam and Eve didn't trust God's interpretation of their circumstances. And listen, if they can view the Garden of Eden as their prison, the Garden of Eden is holding you back. That's your biggest problem in life. Like, if they can do that, how easy is it for us to do the same thing? You will never behave in a way that is inconsistent with the way you view yourself. Did you know that? Let that sink in for me. I'm going to say it again. You will never behave in a way that is inconsistent with the way you view yourself. If you view your sense of self and your sense of worth and your sense of identity and your sense of calling and your relationships, if you view those things as being dependent on your circumstances, then you will allow your circumstances to tell you how to behave within them. Let that sink in for a minute. If I interpret my life in my own power, I will never understand what it means to be a child of God. And I'll certainly never live like it. I will never understand what it means that I'm loved unconditionally, and I will certainly never live like it. I'll miss out on the confidence that I can have, and the peace I can have, and the joy I can have, all because I'm so stuck on my own interpretation of my dream and this season and these circumstances. Paul said that he's learned the secret of being content. Paul said, I can be content in any circumstance. I don't care if I have a lot of things or if I'm not doing that well. I can be content in everything, and I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. The point of that verse, and we take it this way all the time, is not, I can do all things. Look at me, I can do anything. That's not the point of that verse. The point of that verse is, apart from Christ, you can do nothing. You can only do good things. I can do all things through Christ, who gives me strength. Without his interpretation of my purpose, my calling, or my relationships, I'm never going to figure this stuff out on my own. I won't. So that's what I need to spend my time doing. All the time that he's been sitting in jail, Joseph's been using it to get ready for the next season by getting his feet planted, getting squared up with God, and getting dependent on him for the interpretation of what's happening in his life. How do I know that he's doing that? How do I know that he's doing that? Why? Because you don't bear witness to the most powerful and dangerous man in the world, Pharaoh, without being fully convinced of it yourself. You just don't. You tell Pharaoh what he wants to hear. Okay, that is how you live through this situation. Joseph said, I'm not going to do it. It's going to come from God, and this is what it means. There's some good news and some bad news in the middle of it. And when you get seriously that dependent on God, you know what happens? Breakthrough.